creating your own tool, open source project, program, it gives you a lot of different things. The first is it gives you experience. It gives you experience to get outside of just like the hello world and learning just standard syntax in a programming language. It actually gets you to build something real. The second thing is it helps a lot on your resume. I mean, if you take an open source project, you take some code that you wrote, you throw it up on GitHub, and maybe you showcase it in an interview, or you have it in your cover letter, or even in your resume itself under like some sort of, your projects on your resume, it helps a ton. So let's take a look at how to build a command line tool using Go and Cobra. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new directory for our application, our weather check application that we're going to be building. So we're going to do cd c go source, and this is going to be going into my Go root on my Windows 10 machine. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to type mkdir to create a new directory. I'm going to name it weather check. So what this is going to do is this is going to give us a directory where we can start building our console application in. So I'm going to cd into weather check. And then I'm going to run go get -u, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to get the Cobra package. So if you're not familiar with Cobra, essentially what it is it's a simpler way to create a command line tool in Go. You can initialize packages. It gives you pretty much everything you need, from being able to execute commands to being able to create commands to being able to create flags. So let's go ahead and we're going to pull down this GitHub package. Okay, and we now have Cobra. So I'm going to clear my screen, and then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to want to initialize my package. So I'm going to type Cobra init, and then I'm going to say pkg name, and then I'm going to give my application a name. So I'm going to call it weather check. So we can now see that your Cobra application is ready at go source weather check. So if I ls here, we can see now that we have a license, we have a main.go, and we have a cmd. So let's open this up in VS Code now so we can actually start writing some code. Right, bring over VS Code. Let me maximize this a little bit for if you're on mobile, you're able to see it. So let's actually go through this a little bit. The first thing that you're going to see is the root under CMD. So under CMD, that directory, that's where all of the commands are that you can run. And we're going to actually create our own commands here. So under root, let's just go under here a little bit. And what we can see is we can see the package CMD. We see a few imports, things like OS and FMT and Cobra. And then we also see Viper. So we see this variable here. And the reason why you have a variable here is because if you have a function and you have, let's say, two functions, you have a function to actually run your command, which we can see here on line 30, and then you have an init function, for example, and that's what you're able to use to pass in flags and create flags and stuff like that. For example, you need the ability to have that global scoped variable so you can use it in multiple functions. So the first thing that we see here is the root command on line 30, and we see that there's a pointer to cobra.command. Now that interface, that command interface, takes in a few different arguments: use, short, and long. Use is the command that you're going to actually be using. Like, for example, let's say you have a git clone. Clone is the command that you're using. In our case, weather check will be the command that we're using, and we're going to actually create that command. And then you have a short description and a long description. And then you go down here on line 46 and you see an execute. That execute function is what's actually running the function for you, what's AKA having the ability to run that command. And then you go to init, and init is going to be, if you want to pass in flags, like we can see on line 60 and line 64 here, we're able to pass in some flags here. And then if we have a CFG file, if we have that configuration file, we can initialize it with the function on line 68. So this is the root file, and we don't really go in here too much and really play around with anything. I mean, you can go in here and edit it if you want to, but instead we want to actually create our own command. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to close out of root. I'm going to open up my terminal here, and under go source weather check, what I'm going to do is I'm going to type Cobra add. Cobra add is the command that we're using to create a command. So we're using a command to create a command. So what this allows us to do is, again, it allows us to literally create our own command. So when you think about a command, think about it like git clone. Clone is the command that you use to pull down a repository. And then there's other commands like push and commit and all this other stuff, tag, bunch of different commands in the git library. So what we're doing is we are creating our own command to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to call it check weather. And I'm going to click add here. So now we can see that that command has been created and we can see it right here. So I created this little tiny API, well, not even an API, literally a console application. I created it with Cobra to be able to use for this YouTube video and for, some other content that I'm creating. So here's the link if you want to actually go and check out the weather app, but we're going to be building it right here. So it's really up to you. You can go there to copy the code if you want to, or you can just follow along. So now I have my check weather command. So let's go ahead and open this up. And as we can see, it's very much the same compared to like that root command. We have the var, we have the use, short, long, we have initializations. So what we can do here is we're literally going to completely remove all this, right? And then we're going to remove all of this. So now let's give it literally just a description. Weather check checks the weather based on zip code. And then we can give this short description, weather checker to check weather. Very original. And then this command here is check weather. So that's the command that we created and the command that we're going to be using. So let's go over what we have so far under run. Run is, as you guessed it, what actually runs the function. That's going to be our code there. That's going to be what we're using to run the function. So we can see here that there's a function, it's an anonymous function, and it has CMD, and then there's a pointer to cobra.command. And then there's args, and these args are passing in an empty string slice here. So we can see that we have a string and we have a slice, and we can pass in arguments if you want to. So don't change these. These are actually mandatory by default for Cobra, but we really don't have to play around with this too much. This is actually obviously because we're going to be passing in flags and stuff like that. So we do have a command here already inside of our anonymous function, fmt println check weather called. So let's just go ahead and completely wipe all of that out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the code that I already wrote for this, and I'm going to literally paste it in, and we're going to go over it. What is this code here? Well, there's two variables, response and error, and it equals an HTTP GET request. And this GET request is going to api.weatherstack.com. So if you're not familiar with the WeatherStack API, it's literally an API that allows you to check real-time and historical data based on, an API call. So you can do a get, for example, and you can choose your different city, and you can bring back all the different data based on, say, Fahrenheit and all of that stuff. So if you don't already have an account, which I'm sure a lot of you don't, it's actually free. So you can click sign up for free here, and you can see that there are a bunch of different options for paid, like standard and professional and business, but you can just use the free one. So the only thing about the free one is you only have 1,000 calls per month, which is fine if you're just playing around with this and testing. Limited support and real-time weather, that's again perfectly fine. That's really all we care about. The other thing here that they don't list is that you cannot make HTTPS calls, so it can only be HTTP, which is, again, perfectly fine just for testing purposes. So this HTTP GET request, what it's doing is it's making a call to, remember, HTTP, not HTTPS, api.weatherstack.com/current, aka that real-time current weather, and then you have an access key that you pass in. So when you create that account, you're actually going to be able to get an API key right off the bat, and it's going to be just right in your profile. And then you have a query based on location. So this location is actually going to be a zip code. And then I have units that are being passed in as Fahrenheit. So going down here, we have our error checking here. So if error doesn't equal nil, we're going to print out that error. And then we're going to read the response of the body. So again, this response variable, that's what we're reading here. We're going to be using the ioutil package, and we're going to be reading all, aka read all of the response. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take that response, we're going to throw it into a variable. There's two variables that occur here. We only need one, and the second variable is one that actually has the data that we need. So we're going to be passing this in as string conf. That's going to be another package that we're using, and we're literally going to be using the function atoi to take type byte data. The type is of type byte, and we want to convert it to a string. So what I mean by that is anytime that you do a response from, this api.weatherstack.com, this GET request, it brings back a bunch of bytes. So we want to be able to take those bytes and transfer them or convert them into a string. And then we're going to JSON marshal the JSON data that comes out for us so we can make it look a little bit cleaner and just, clean up the output a little bit. And then again, we're going to be printing out that output. We're going to be using the string conversion package again, atoi function, and then we're going to be passing in that byte as JSON output, which is this variable right here. So with that, that is our command. That's what we're going to literally be using to run our application. So now it's time to pass in our variables that we're going to need for our application. Now we have two variables, API key and location. So what we're going to do is we're going to type var API key string and var location string, right? So we have these two variables here that are set up for us. These are global variables, and these are being used here and here. Now we're also going to use them to set up our new flags. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down to that init function, and we have two flags here that we're going to be passing in. So let's type check weather CMD, and the reason why we're calling that is because that's the variable on line 33 to actually initialize our command. And then what we're going to be running is we're going to type in a persistent flag. That's a function that we'll be using. And then we'll type in string var p because we're going to be passing in a string variable. So here's where things get a little bit interesting. We're going to actually use a pointer to API key, and that pointer is because we want to get that network address from that global variable because we're passing it in a few different places. Passing it in our initialize function. We're also passing it in our anonymous function to run our commands. So we're going to be passing an API key, and then we're going to give this variable, or I'm sorry, flag a name, this argument a name. So the long name is going to be API key, and then the short name is just going to be A. So what I mean by long and short is, how when you have a command and you type hyphen name, or then you type hyphen letter or just a short phrase or something like that, that's exactly what this is. So it'll be hyphen API key hyphen A. So you can use one or the other depending if you want to use the short one or the long one. Either one is going to work. And then we're going to just pass in a nil string for the fourth value, and then we're going to pass in a description. So passes in an API key from WeatherStack. Okay, so we're literally going to do the same thing down here, except this is going to be for our location variable. Okay, so now we're going to pass in again that pointer to location. We're going to give this a name, location, and actually I want to pause right here. I want to point something out to you. You have API key with an uppercase A, location with an uppercase L, API key with a lowercase a, location with a lowercase l. The reason why these aren't the same names is because this is actually like that second value that quotes API key quotes location. It's creating essentially a new value, a new variable. So what happens is if you try to use both, because I did try to use both just to test this out, Go yells at you and says that you're defining the same variable twice. Now we're gonna click or click. Now we're gonna create the short flag, which is gonna be L. Again, we're gonna use a nil value here, and then we're gonna give this a description. Pass in location based on zip code. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna save that. Now that this is saved, let's go ahead and close out, and then we're going to open up our main.go. Our main.go is very, very straightforward. We have package main, of course, because we're calling our main package, and then we're importing weather check / cmd. That's our package that we've used, for example, to create this package for the check weather. So we're going to be importing that specific package, and then func main is literally going to be running cmd.execute, which that execute function is right here on line 32 in the Go root. So with that, let's go ahead and open up our terminal, clear my screen here, and I'm going to run go install. This has now installed our new application. Before moving on, what you're going to have to do is, remember how I said that weather stack, the API, you're going to need that free account. You're going to need that free account because you have to pass in the API key to connect to WeatherCheck or to WeatherStack. So go ahead, get that API key, and then come right back. With that, let's go ahead and run our command. So our application, WeatherCheck, we're going to be using the command check weather. We're going to pass in our API key. In my case, it's going to be this. Don't try to hack me because I've already reset it by the time you're watching this. And then I'm going to also pass in my location, and the location I'm going to use is Paramus, New Jersey, and Paramus, New Jersey is a zip code near me. So I'm going to pass in 07653, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this. And as we can see, I have typed in the wrong API key flag, and that's actually pretty good though, because this is supposed to be a capital K, but this is actually a good thing for you guys to see anyways. So you can see that it says unknown flags or unknown flag API key, usage, weather check, and then the command, and then weather. And we can see that our flags are listed here for us automatically. So we can see that it's a capital K. That's fine, just a typo on my part. But again, good that you guys were able to see that because you're actually able to see the output. So let's try that again. And as we can see, our weather check command has run. We can see things like the zip code, the query, the language. We can see that the state is New Jersey. We can see that the country is USA. We can see that the town name is Paramus. And then we can see other things like the temperature, for example. And we can see that it's a smooth 37 degrees. And with that, that's how you can create a CLI command using Go and Cobra. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you again next time.